News Without Borders.
Throughout the world, almost 2 million girls are circumcised every year, in a cultural and sometimes deadly rite of passage. Now, one African woman living in Denmark has decided to fight back.
Jeg sagde til min mor, jeg vil gerne arbejde for at stoppe omskæring af kvinder. Og hun græd. Og så mit barn, det skal du ikke.
Join Kate Kendall as she embarks on a dangerous journey home to confront one of the most sensitive rituals of her childhood.
Wednesday, 11:30 p.m. Eastern, 8:30 p.m. Pacific.
Je n'ai jamais torturé personne parce que je voulais le punir. J'ai sauvé en interrogeant des gens, même avec brutalité, même jusqu'à leur mort. Eh bien, j'ai sauvé un nombre considérable de vies humaines, un nombre considérable. Voilà.
French General Paul Osores is celebrating his 86th birthday with friends at a shooting party. 50 years ago, he was personally involved in the torture and killing of prisoners during the Algerian War of Independence. It was an early experiment in anti-guerrilla warfare, where the French army resorted to widespread use of torture to gain intelligence and help suppress Muslim insurgents.
Le gouvernement français avait dit qu'il faut détruire à tout prix l'organisation qui pose les bombes. Ça veut dire à tout prix. Qu'est-ce que ça veut dire à tout prix?
In the 1950s, Algeria, then a part of metropolitan France, was beset by guerrilla attacks from the Algerian National Liberation Front, the FLN. Osres and his secret intelligence unit was tasked with breaking the Muslim insurgents in the city of Algiers.
Quand j'étais dans la résistance, qui avait été capturé par les nazis et torturé. Oui, je savais qu'en utilisant les mêmes méthodes que les nazis, j'arriverais à un résultat.
In Algeria, the French favored physical torture. They pioneered the use of electric shock. It was administered by wires from a field telephone attached to various parts of the anatomy, including the genitalia.
The electric shock is very unpleasant, you know. It's very unpleasant. So it does not kill. But the man who was victimized by such a shock wants it to stop.
I couldn't see anything but just sparks, light and sparks, and this impression of having your eyes bulging out of your face. It's very painful.
Henri Alleg was the editor of an Algerian newspaper supporting independence. In 1957, he was arrested and tortured repeatedly.
After a few days of torture, one of the paratroopers of the torture said to a man who was there, "Well, here he is, mon commandant, Osores." He said in a very soft voice to me, "We have to know everything, so you must help us."
Torture using water was the other common technique. The prisoner was held down and water from a hose poured down his throat. Ausserès would increase the flow until the prisoner either talked or drowned.
Eh bien, le type hochait la tête, il ne voulait pas parler. Alors je disais à celui qui avait le tuyau, je lui dis, mais lui encore de l'eau. Je faisais cela sans plaisir, mais je savais qu'il fallait que le type parle vite.
The Villa Soussini was a French army interrogation center in Algeria.
It was a sort of, say, a workshop for torture. At night, they would come with a big lorry and 100 people in pyjamas, night dress, and started torturing people.
Merwan Rania was an FLN guerrilla. Age 16, she was arrested and brought to the Villa Soussini.
I was waiting here and heard cha-cha-cha, cha-cha-cha. They undressed me to torture me. He said, "Do you know how to dance?" I said, "No, I don't know how to dance." And he said, "You're going to dance well, aren't you?" He brought a lot of wires. There was an electric plug here. I felt my whole body throbbing. It was terrible. When it was over, I cried.
Henri Pouillot took notes of confessions made during torture sessions. Sometimes the torturers used sex to deliberately humiliate their Muslim prisoners.
J'ai assisté à des scènes qui, justement, sur ces questions d'atteinte sexuelle.
I was present at some of the sexual abuse, like one prisoner being forced to masturbate another and indeed rape him.
Y compris de le violer. Alors c'est vrai que les militaires avaient du mal souvent à le faire.
Soldiers hated doing this as it repulsed them and wasn't something that could be easily forced, so it was difficult to achieve.
Des hommes à le faire que c'était difficile souvent à obtenir.
You find these French techniques today in Iraq.
Aujourd'hui en Irak.
Since the war in Iraq, this film, The Battle of Algiers, has been shown at the Pentagon to demonstrate how not to treat an Arab population. Those who were in Algeria at the time vouch for its accuracy.
La bataille d'Alger est très bon parce qu'il se rapproche de façon considérable de la vérité, notamment en ce qui concerne les séances d'interrogation.
Ausserès believes that information derived from torture played a vital role in crushing the FLN in Algiers.
Either directly, the man involved would talk, or when he died, it was an example. I feel I was successful all the time. All the time.
But in the long term, such methods were seen as counterproductive and strengthened the nationalist movement. Algeria gained independence in 1962. Following his service in Algeria, Ausserès was promoted to general and received the highest French accolade, the Légion d'honneur. The French government sent him to instruct at military academies around the world.
He was a professor of torture in different countries, starting with the United States in the time of the War of Vietnam, in Chile, in Brazil, in Argentina.
But in 2002, General Ausserès found himself in court for writing a book about his experiences in Algeria. Aged 83, he received a suspended sentence, not for torturing, but for trying to justify his use of torture in Algeria 50 years ago.
J'ai pensé que j'étais trahi. Eh bien, on m'a retiré ma Légion d'honneur. C'est le président de la République lui-même qui a dit qu'il fallait me punir de façon exemplaire. Voilà. I don't ask for forgiveness. Not a question of forgiveness. I did my duty, but I'm not afraid. I'm thinking that I would meet God and ask forgiveness, not at all. That's all.
In August 1971, the British government subjected 12 of its own citizens to interrogation practices derived from the communists in Korea. It was part of the British Army's response to growing terrorist violence by the IRA.
These people, so far as the army were concerned, was a military organization. And therefore, just in much the same way as the military organizations that had interrogated in Kenya, Aden, so it was felt at the time that these people should be put through an interrogation. The problem that they faced all of a sudden is they didn't like the big boys' rules.
Those selected for interrogation in depth had hoods placed over their heads and were flown to a secret army location.
We hear the helicopter sound, we drag toward the helicopter, the blades flying. They're going to throw us out of the helicopter, you know, they're going to take us up and throw us out of the helicopter.
The soldiers that were there were saying to me, you're going out here, you're going out here, you're getting killed here. We'll see how far we can get you to drop.
Watching was Ray Derrick, an army sergeant guarding the interrogation centre.
The helicopter was hovering, maybe only a foot, but they actually give the guy a push.
And I'm taking him brought to the back of the helicopter, and I'm just throwing out.
He didn't know whether he was 100 feet up, 200 feet up, or 6 inches up. I thought it was amusing at the time. It's not so funny now.
And immediately seized upon, picked up, and I'm actually carried shoulder high. I believe in carried shoulder and passed through a window. And then brought in and up against the wall, and that was the start of 7 days of pure hell.
For a week, the prisoners were subjected to 5 specific interrogation techniques, most of which have been used in the current war on terror. Nick van der Bijl served with the Intelligence Corps in Northern Ireland. He was not involved with these interrogations, but he is familiar with the 5 techniques used. From the start, the hooded men, now in boiler suits, were made to stand for hours at a time in stress positions against a wall.
False standing is to reduce physical strength. We need to reduce that individual's mental ability and his physical ability to withstand interrogations.
Fingertips, toes, legs spread out. You try to step back off the wall to have a go, you were just simply battered but back up again. And your arm just sort of froze. Your legs froze, your back was strained, your head went down. And then the noise started, the white noise.
And it was like an old television set that had ceased broadcasting but hadn't been switched off. So there was just that loud hissing sound.
White noise is essentially, it's a bit like a high-frequency radio that has a sort of mush, and if I go a bit like that, a little bit louder, obviously.
To disorientate the prisoners further, other sounds were introduced.
The worst one was the sound of a firing squad. Men in a loud voice giving the order to present arms and to fire. As well as that, there was sort of funeral music.
They were deprived of adequate food, water and sleep.
It is physically and mentally demanding to be deprived of sleep, and I need to keep that going in order that I can keep the shock of capture going. C'est la vie, that's the way it goes in an interrogation centre. It's not a nice place.
During this whole time, I was defecating and urinating in the boiler suit that whole week.
The humiliating conditions were part of a deliberate policy of softening up the men before interrogation. The prisoners were stripped and pictures taken.
I remember they took me out of the room, stood me against the wall in the nude and stood with his arm around me and had himself photographed with me in the nude. You were being dragged down the corridor, the dogs would be howling at you. Number 8, say hello to that dog, you bastard, you. You know, say good morning to the dog.
A prisoner is a simple source of intelligence, as much as intelligence as a document or a photograph or a dead body or a piece of information that might come from a patrol. He's just a simple asset within that intelligence cycle, nothing more.
And they were asking you the most stupid questions. Like, you know, who's in the IRA? Who do you know in the IRA? I hadn't a clue who was in the IRA.
I felt rather proud at the time to be part of a small unit that was getting this information from bombers and killers and IRA sympathizers.
Even if it meant using torture?
Yeah. I was starting to make up stories just to give them names of people about who were in the IRA. But they were neighbours of mine, people who I knew weren't in the IRA. I threw myself down, literally trying to break my neck. And when I was laying on the ground after doing it, I'd only hurt my head and split my head open. But I cried because I didn't die.
What was certainly effective was the end result, i.e. that those individuals were prepared to spill their guts to their interrogators. My understanding is that the IRA in Londonderry had been almost blown apart by the information that some of these people had given. So it became effective, extremely effective.
After 8 days, the detainees were transferred away from the interrogation centre. After the use of these methods became public knowledge, the British government banned them. They in the British Army had discovered that it was one thing to use these techniques against a foreign enemy, another to employ them against your own civilian population.
I would never dream now of doing the things that I did when I was in Vietnam. People don't realize that when you're thrown into a situation like that, into a war, you know, it's like they expect you to, 1 minute you're trying to kill the guy, and the next minute he's sitting in front of you, and you're supposed to ask him, "Sir, would you please tell me where you hid your weapon that you were shooting at me with?" It doesn't work that way. The brutality doesn't stop when the shooting stops.
UVC? Yeah, UVC. Huh? UVC?
Confronted by a different type of warfare in Vietnam, guerrilla fighters hiding among a civilian population, this time it was the Americans who were perpetrators of abuse, as well as victims.
The Vietnam era was an era that was new and unique in American military history because the Vietnam War was a war, much as the Iraqi war is today, where the enemy is pretty much unknown. So today, the American soldier operating in Iraq would basically draw upon the experiences of Vietnam to justify any action he takes.
Well, this prisoner claims to be a member of a company, a battalion, a regiment, the numbers of which sound doubtful to us.
You think he's lying?
Yes, I think he is.
A Viet Cong prisoner had come into the aid station, and this guy was involved in an ambush or something. He was hurt. There was a major, not getting anything out of him, takes a pencil and starts prodding the open wounds to gain information out of him. And I'm a new guy in country. I've never seen anything like this in my life, you know? I'm shocked. Nobody said anything. Nobody did anything. I realized then, anything goes. Anything goes. This guy had information that I thought was important. So as a last resort, after we had all taken a shot at the guy and got absolutely nothing out of him, nothing, we decided to use the field phone. We've got his feet in a container of water. The field phone has two clips, you know, positive and a negative. So we clipped one to his ear and one to his testicle or inside of his thigh. I didn't really give a shit. I didn't care. Just hooked the guy up. And we cranked the phone. And the more you crank, the faster you crank, the more electricity it generates. And it was like the guy was having seizures, drooling, you know, it was unpleasant. It was unpleasant. Again, nothing. We got nothing out of this guy.
Unimpressed by the poor results from physical torture, Zagalonis now tried a more psychological method, exploiting his most powerful asset, fear.
People were surprised that dogs were being used in Guantanamo and in Abu Ghraib. I thought it was a great idea myself. What we did is we would tell the Vietnamese that the dog is trained to sense when they're lying. Didn't tell them the dog was going to kill them, didn't threaten them with the dog, just the dog knows when you're lying, so you make sure you tell us the truth. So the dog would raise up and be in this guy's face, you know, just slathering, fangs, you know, wanting to bite his face off. And they're backed up against the wall, and I mean, they would, lose control of their bladder. And in a way, it was funny, but at the time, I wasn't killing the guy and I wasn't hurting him. I was scaring him. So I didn't see anything wrong with it, you know? I mean, this was, again, it was coercion, it wasn't torture.
Cualquier persona puede llegar a torturar.
Anyone can become a torturer. It depends on the circumstances of your country, and your own ideas and training. If you're brainwashed, then you're capable of doing it.
The story of Hugo Garcia from Uruguay shows just how easy it is to become a torturer, and how difficult it is to stop. The responsibility for his schooling in torture, he claims, lies in the hands of the United States.
The responsibility of the US is huge. All my superiors were trained in intelligence work and torture at the School of the Americas.
This building is in Fort Gulick, near the Atlantic side of the canal. It's called the School of the Americas, and it has for 20 years been providing courses in Spanish for officers and men of Latin American armies.
In the 1970s, the U.S. Army School of the Americas was located in Panama, where its activities were not subject to United States law.
Torture techniques taught, from rape to derobing to torture with pointed objects, to burning, to breaking of extremities, poking eyes out, branding, just about anything that would be considered bringing a person to the edge where they might say something you want to hear.
In Latin America, there are various regimes which at the moment are abusing human rights: political murder, torture, deportations, imprisonment without trial, using the techniques they may have learned in this establishment.
You may be right.
If you can say that the skills which we've taught here have been applied, I can't deny that.
Todos los que iban al canal, cuando volvían completamente convencidos de que...
Whoever went to Panama came back full of conviction, so the doctrine there was very strong and tough.
Doctrinamiento muy férreo también ahí.
The use of torture of a known enemy soldier to gain some kind of military advantage, I think, is justifiable and smart. To go beyond that, to use torture techniques merely to intimidate people is completely wrong, unethical and immoral.
In the Uruguayan army, Hugo was trained in torture techniques to combat what he was told was a communist threat to his country.
Para llegar a esto de los interrogatorios...
To prepare you to become a torturer, they went through it step by step.
De a poco, ¿no? Paso a paso iban siguiendo. El tipo de tortura que funcionaba más, evidentemente, era eso.
The submarine was the most effective torture, because you feel you're drowning.
Esto le da una sensación como que se está ahogando, ¿verdad?
Otra vez al agua y así
They submerge you into the water again and again. You start to vomit water, and you lose control of your bodily functions. And you end up feeling as if your body had been destroyed.
Primero completamente dolorido.
Torture sessions were carried out in an army garage. Music was an integral part of the torture.
Había una canción que se escuchaba.
There was one song that was very popular, Yellow Submarine by the Beatles.
Te hacían llevarlo, los llevamos al lugar donde se iba a interrogar.
I put them on a bed
Tú tenías que
and tied them up.
la cama, ¿verdad? Y tenías que estar ahí, tenías que levantar la cama donde
Then we
estaba
lifted the bed up
él o ella, ¿no?
and submerged their heads in water.
Estaba acostado y sumergirlo, ¿no? En el agua, ¿no? Y sacarlo otra vez y todo esto. La tortura es eficaz, se consigue.
Torture is effective in getting information, whether it's with physical or psychological
Ya sea
torture.
tortura física como psíquica, ¿no?
South American torturers were quite prepared to torture women as well as men.
Eso de que las mujeres aguantan más el dolor, ¿no?
Even the fact that women can withstand torture and interrogation better than men was in our manuals.
Eso estaba inclusive en los manuales. No tenía problemas con eso, con estar ahí, no tenía problemas.
I didn't have a problem being there with all the people screaming and shouting.
Pasar por un sufrimiento, vamos a decir, porque
It was my duty,
esto como
and I was a professional.
como algo profesional, ¿no?
Hugo loyally participated in torture for 3 years. But one day he saw a woman being tortured who was well known to his family. He began to question what he was doing.
My cousin told me about Lillian and said she was a good person with her own family.
Sentí que él tenía una actitud como diferente conmigo.
I thought he was different to the others. He was more friendly, and he wasn't after anything.
Amable, pero que tampoco estaba buscando nada.
Personalmente me cambió en el sentido de que
Personally, it changed me,
ya me di cuenta que yo tenía
because I realized that I had to think for myself.
pensar por mi propia
I could no longer accept everything I was told by my superior.
aceptar todo lo que me decían mis oficiales.
At great personal risk, Hugo contacted Lillian's mother and told her where her daughter was. The information secured Lillian's release. Hugo exposed the torture to the media and fled the country in fear of his life.
Lo asume, lo dice, lo dijo en su momento Y también debe haber tenido sus costos.
He risked a lot to do that, because he's had to leave his country and become an exile.
Un exilio. Tampoco debe haber sido muy fácil para él y para su vida. Entonces, bueno, en ese
I'm sure that hasn't been easy. So in that sense, I respect him.
respetable.
It's 26 years since Hugo Garcia tortured anyone. Though in exile, he still works in a garage. But he lives with the stigma of his past.
Esto me ha marcado. Hay gente que dice, se refiere a mí como el torturador. Si lo hubiera hecho, ¿no es?
It would have been easier if I had killed them rather than tortured them. It's left me scarred. Even today, there are people who still call me the torturer.
In Argentina, the scars of torture are still raw. 22 years after the end of the military dictatorship, the mothers of the Plaza de Mayo parade the images of their lost loved ones. An estimated 30,000 individuals were tortured and killed or disappeared during that time.
La música dibuja prácticamente todo lo que...
Music draws anything an artist could paint.
One of the most notorious figures in Argentina today is former police officer Julio Simón. He's now in prison, awaiting trial on torture and kidnap charges.
Y las óperas prefiero los finales felices.
I like operas with a happy ending. The same with movies. I like happy endings and for good to triumph over evil. My life could be an opera, although it has a bad ending. They could write an opera of the story of my life.
Here he is 5 years ago, being recognized and assaulted in a Buenos Aires coffee shop.
Y los integrantes de Libertad por presos políticos de la Tablada están rompiendo en este momento.
Que salió a la luz porque quizás por ser uno de los asesinos más violentos.
He came into the spotlight because he was one of the most violent killers there. He was known as the Butcher. He was half crazy, mad. Even his colleagues thought that.
Con respecto a los mismos compañeros, ¿no?
My training was done on the streets because that's where the information was. My weapons were my ears, my eyes, and my mouth.
Los oídos, los ojos y la boca.
Ana Maria Cariaga has good cause to remember Julio Simón. In 1977, she was a 16-year-old student in Buenos Aires, 3 months pregnant. Her politics made her a target for the military regime.
I was walking towards a shop window when I saw 2 men running towards me, so I stopped to let them pass. But they grabbed me and dragged me into a car. It was like pressing the pause button and the scene stops. The only thing moving was me. People were just standing there doing nothing.
She was driven to one of the many buildings in Buenos Aires, taken over by the regime for interrogations.
I said to her, take the blindfold off. I don't talk to people wearing blindfolds.
He took our blindfolds off and wanted us to see what he looked like. It was a power trip. He was saying, look how powerful I am. Even though you could identify me, it makes no difference. Nothing will happen to me.
A mí nunca me va a pasar nada.
Solamente proceder a una tortura que podrían enseñar, no sé, en la Escuela de las Américas.
Instead of doing the things they learnt at the School of the Americas, He seemed to refine things. He would do other kinds of torture, which even his colleagues found repulsive.
He got me out of my cell, and I was obviously pregnant then. He tortured me with the electric picano without tying me up. The picana is an Argentinian invention. It's used to brand cattle and looks like a pencil with an electric wire coming out of the back.
Sometimes information was unfortunately more important than ethics.
They said things like, "We're Nazis." And when they tortured you, they were listening to Hitler's speeches and would say stuff like, "Oh, how good this one is." The policemen were playing cards and laughing, or maybe playing ping pong. I was very worried that the physical torture might have hurt my baby.
I would be there with them for at least 1.5 days, 2 days, 3 days. I didn't go to sleep, and at some point, while they were dreaming, they would give me the information I wanted.
Every time when another guard who had tortured me was on duty, he kicked me and shouted, "You fucking bitch, why didn't you tell me you were pregnant? Do you want me to open your legs and make you abort?" For me, it was a privilege to be pregnant, because it meant I wasn't alone. I don't know how I would have felt without her with me.
This is how I got sucked into this vortex. I got more involved every time. This is why they call me the torturer, killer, and all those other names.
Ana Maria was released after 4 months and fled Argentina. When her baby was born, she telephoned her mother back home to tell her the good news, but she was never to see her again.
On the 11th of December, I called to say Anita had been born. I was told my mother had been kidnapped 3 days earlier. I will always remember that I missed uniting the two most beautiful things in my life by just 3 days, and my mother never knew that Anita had been born and was okay. That was very sad. But she's almost 27 now, and she recently had a baby, so I'm a grandmother.
Tuvo hace poco un bebé, así que soy abuela. Y bueno, eso.
Ana Maria and Anita returned to Argentina after the military regime fell in 1983. Ana now works on an archaeological dig, excavating the building where she was tortured by Julio Simón. The site will be made into a museum, a reminder that in the long term, torture rarely sustains a regime.
I feel that I'm a very good Argentinian. Let's see, here in my cell. I don't have any pictures of naked girls or anything like that. I have 2 Argentinian flags on the walls. But I am here, and I will die with a clear conscience.
But I haven't yet seen one guy that don't talk. I can take anybody and I'll make him talk. That's no problem.
The dangers of having absolute power over others is seen most dramatically in countries like South Africa, where under apartheid, torture was an integral part of the state apparatus.
It's like we grew up in a military state, and we believe that the ANC was the bad guys and we have to fight to keep them away.
In 1984, Van Vuren joined the South African police. Before long, he was part of a secret death squad within the security branch. Torture was part of the job.
In the night you have to work and kill people, and during the day you have to be putting up a face. You have to be an ordinary police guy, a security police. It was difficult.
When a state begins to torture, it often finds itself required to murder to dispose of its victims. Paul Van Vuren was both torturer and executioner.
I killed, we didn't hold any a scoreboard or a scorecard, you know, but maybe around about 70. And interrogated, yeah, well, that's a lot. It could be, in my total career as a security policeman, anything between 150 and 500. I can't tell you the exact, it's impossible. But it's a lot, I can just tell you it's a lot. If we take somebody and he must live and there must be no marks on him, we just fasten him tight on the chair and put a gas mask on. We don't take the plug out underneath, we just leave the plug in. And he was strangled against himself. You can't get the gas mask out of your head and you're suffocating. And that was, to me, the most effective, because we would go on. Normally we were sitting there, are you going to talk? He said, no, we leave the gas mask on. You tell him from the beginning, I'm going to give you 3 chances. Third time, I'm not going to take it off. You're going to suffocate. Either you tell me what I want to know, or you're going to die. We never came to the third time. They always talk. Always. They were mellow. They were like a sponge in your hand. If you press them, the water comes out.
In July 1987, Paul and his unit kidnapped Harold Sefola, a known ANC activist.
He disappeared. It was on a Thursday. I then went to the Mamelodi police. So they took the statement, and then they said they will investigate.
Sefola and 2 comrades were taken to a quarry located north of Pretoria.
He was an old man. He was very humble, you know, and I was like, no, we had the wrong guy for sure. But when you start talking, you realize that he was highly experienced and very dangerous.
And there they tortured them and then interrogated them, beat them all the time. So they did that for about 3 days.
So we killed him. We start killing them one by one with the electric generator. Now, our job was to kill them. The interrogation part was just a bonus. All the other people was begging for their lives, and his request was giving the ANC sign, and they were singing Nkosi Sikelel. So he died with honor. There was no fear in him left.
How did you feel when you were singing it?
I have respect for him. Till the day I have respect for him. And then we blew up their bodies with a landmine explosion. So they can't be recognized. And that's the story. Some of the people think, oh, these oaks are monsters. Actually, I'm very good-hearted, you know, I help people a lot. But I don't care what they think, if I'm a murderer or a torturer or what. We were just ordinary people that was in a war situation that believed in what we did.
Don't ask me to forgive you. I'm not so kindly blessed.
Why I'm here is to seek forgiveness. This is where reconciliation started, where the Lord is being honored.
When did you start being a Christian?
That was in 72. I gave my heart to the...
You also failed. This footage shows former security policeman Gideon Nieuwoud trying to be reconciled with the family of an ANC activist he tortured and killed.
I've done my duty, and I know it's difficult for you as a family. I know it. Thank you.
I think we made it.
He's been attacked by the victim's son. Nieuwoud is one of South Africa's most notorious torturers. He also claims to be a devout Christian.
It's not easy to live with that situation as a torturer, but the difference is that the forgiveness, the true forgiveness by Christ. I know Christ has forgiven me. Then I don't care what other people say. The quality to physically torture a person, really, there's no quality. You know, you pick that up of experience, and by opening your eyes and ears to be one step ahead, like playing snooker. So you must be effective in that sense, that you must be 2 shots ahead.
It was here in the headquarters of the Port Elizabeth Security Police that Gideon Nieuwoud interrogated Steve Biko, the leader of the Black Consciousness movement. In September 1977, Biko was beaten into a coma during an interrogation by Nieuwoud and 3 other officers.
I was personally involved where I interrogated Steve Biko, and I personally assaulted him with a hose pipe, which were very effective. The hose pipe is plastic, especially green ones, and he said that's a green power. And you use that as an instrument to hit him over the head all the time, because it doesn't make any marks.
So that was an effective method?
Very effective.
On the 12th of September, Steve Biko died of injuries inflicted over several days during his detention. ANC activist Custer Jack was also tortured by Gideon Nieuwoud.
He was the first policeman to arrest me and to torture me, and he was also the last one to arrest and to torture me. This spans over a period of between 76 to 1989.
One of Nieuwoud's favorite torture techniques was dubbed the helicopter.
Helicopter is where you handcuff the person, and then you put a stick between the arms as you handcuff him like that, and you put the stick through his leg.
And they take you and hang you between 2 tables. And then your buttocks are exposed to them as you lie on your back like that.
And then you use the hose pipe, which I did to Mkuseli Jack.
They don't even need to hit you. It's such a painful thing.
And then I detained him in solitary confinement, which was also very effective. It's like a piano. You make use of the black and the white notes to make a sweet melody.
He was a psychopath because he enjoys to see the pain, real pain.
In an attempt to force him to cooperate, Nieuwert paraded Kuster-Jack in his car around Port Elizabeth. By appearing to befriend Kuster, Nieuwert intended to let ANC colleagues think Kuster had betrayed them.
He points, is that one? Is that one? The people move back like that, you know, they scared that, oh, they comes Kuster. And he started to give you cigarettes. Oh, Kuster, have a cigarette. The aim was to strip you any kind of honor, which is another method of torture they used. It was a strength of our own conviction, to be honest, that we managed to go through all that.
Both Kuster-Jack and Nieuwert still live in the Port Elizabeth area, where, since the end of apartheid, Kuster has become a millionaire. Nieuwert hasn't worked since he left the force. A strange bond has formed between the two men.
He phoned me about a week ago. He wanted to know whether I can buy some calamari or squid, which he claims he had. I just said no, thank you, because we don't buy squid like that. We got our boats that cash for us, but had it been a good business proposal, I would have bought it.
I'm glad he's made a success of his business, but I really got no resentment or hate or anything that concern. You see, that's so long as we can live in peace and harmony. That's all I'm concerned about.
When he sees me now these days, he feels like he sees us as messiahs. He always hang on every word that we can say.
How do you feel about that?
I am a satisfied person. I'm a satisfied man. I'm a happy man. A man that is very, very pleased with the turn of events.
Nieuwert was refused amnesty in connection with the death of Steve Biko. He's awaiting trial over charges involving torture and unlawful killing. Today, in the war on terror, the pressure is on to make people talk. These scenes show the abuse of prisoners held for interrogation since 9/11. As it always has been, torture today is universally condemned, but widely practiced. For the truth is that torture can sometimes work. The lesson of history, however, is that too often torture eats away at the very civilization it claims to protect.
Cry, cry, cry like the rest. Don't ask me to forgive you. I'm not so kindly blessed.
To learn more about the program you've just watched, visit linktv.org.
Throughout the world, almost 2 million girls are circumcised every year, in a cultural and sometimes deadly rite of passage. Now, one African woman living in Denmark has decided to fight back.
Jeg sagde til min mor, jeg vil gerne arbejde for at stoppe omskæring af kvinder. Og hun græd. Og så mit barn, det skal du ikke.
Join Kate Kendall as she embarks on a dangerous journey home to confront one of the most sensitive rituals of her childhood.
Wednesday, 11:30 p.m. Eastern, 8:30 p.m. Pacific.
Hey, I'm Ryan Fleck.
And I'm Anna Bowden.
And we made the documentary Young Rebels, which you can see here on Link TV.
Where you can find all sorts of world documentaries, cinema, music, and
news.
News.
Which you can't find anywhere else.
I messed up. All kinds of world cinema, documentaries, news, and music that you can't find anyplace else on U.S. television.
And it's totally independent, and it relies on your support.
So